today I'm going to be telling you all how to make a comic book, starting off from scratch, and what you should be focusing on. I myself, I haven't put out a comic book yet, but I've been working on a couple of them for the past couple of years, and my process of just finding a process has been a long and difficult route, but I've learned to find a process, and today I'm just really kind of focusing on what you should be focusing on in the beginning steps so that you can eventually develop your own process, which helps you, because there's no real set in stone process for you to follow. And anybody who tells you that is lying their ass off, and they're probably just trying to take your money. So don't listen to that. But first off, I'm just gonna start off by saying that if you're writing a comic book or manga or anything of that nature, a poem, whatever you're trying to write about, you need to go and study and learn about what it is that you're trying to write about. Because you don't want to just pick up a pen and try to write about aliens if you don't know shit about aliens. The story is not going to make sense. So let's just use aliens for example. If you're writing a comic book about aliens, study those, study spaceships, study science fiction, look at other movies that have aliens in them, look at other books that have aliens in them, comic books, shit, maybe even music. Anything that you could just get that will give you more of an idea of what it is that you're trying to talk about in your story. Now, with the process of writing, there is a lot to learn. And I know that there's a lot to learn, but I really want to emphasize that you should not get overwhelmed with all the information, because what you should be trying to do is focusing on what it is that you really want to do with this. Like, are you just trying to make a comic book, or do you want to self-publish, or do you want to collaborate with others? Whatever your main goals are, and I think you should pick about 3 main goals you want to focus on. Focus on those 3 things, and anything else can kind of just be put off till later or just not as prioritized. So first off, you want to just study the act of writing, like the study of writing. So maybe take a creative writing class. That could be at your university or at your school, or just look it up online. It's really the most simple and fastest way to do it nowadays. You can really find anything online. Publishing, look up how to publish. Read books on how to publish. If you want to draw your own comic book out, look up how to draw. I think the best way of studying is actual experience. And when I say actual experience, this can come in many ways, shapes, and forms. For example, getting into like a writing workshop or something, going to a certain club or organization where they're writing short stories is a really good way to just get that first-hand experience. Or reading other scripts. You can look up movie scripts or theater scripts online and look at how they wrote those things, and that can help you with writing scripts for your own comic book or whatever it is that you're trying to write. Okay, so when you're writing a comic book, I'm assuming that you're writing a comic book that has some characters in it. So I think that the best way to go about this, when you're trying to learn about how to write a character, is first off, just like I mentioned, first-hand experience is probably the best way. But another way that you can do this is by studying personality and or psychology. When you look at personality, all characters have personalities, and usually their personalities are very exaggerated. So that's why certain tropes and archetypes exist, and personalities are basically just tropes and archetypes. But when you look into those things, they give you kind of a framework to go off of. So it's like, okay, I want my character to act in this way, or I want them to, I don't know, express themselves in a certain manner. You can look up certain personalities and see if the character that you're trying to create matches up with that, and that gives you that framework that you're trying to work off of. And there's many different personality typing systems like the Enneagram, MBTI, Socionics, all that, things of that nature. Another thing that you need to focus on is world building. So studying world building is like the study of the world, basically. It's just like if you were to, when you're writing a story, you have the characters, you have the story, and you have the plot, but it has to happen in a certain setting. And I don't know if everybody did this, but I remember when I was in elementary school, we would have these papers where we were supposed to write a story on them. It would usually have characters, setting, problem resolution, basically just giving you characters, plot, and setting, which are basically the three fundamentals of story, right? So the world building is a setting. So what you need to do is study the act of world building, read books, watch YouTube videos, all that. But I think that another way, well, no, not another way, something that you should be doing also is study history. Like studying history, study maps, geography, all those things just help to get a better understanding of how one thing can go from this into that, which will make it cohesive in your story. So this can also help with like story structure, getting from the beginning to the end, and creating a backstory to how things got up to where your story is currently makes things just so much more interesting, because if you make it make sense, it'll just feel like a real lived out world instead of something that you just made up in your head. Lastly, I brought this up a little bit earlier, but I just want to really kind of go over it. And what you can do is study story structure. Story structure is just how things go from point A to point B. And if you have the characters and you have the world, but you don't actually have a story, you don't actually have a structure to it, and you just have no story. So there are a couple story structures that you can do. There is Save the Cat. There's Dan Harmon's story structure, The Hero's Journey. What else? But I'm missing one of those like key ones. I don't know. Anyways, you can look up all those things and look at what works best for you for the story that you're trying to tell, and maybe just test all of them out and see, because you really never know until you try. But in closing, this video is not me saying that I am a master comic book writer in no way, shape, or form. What I was trying to do in this video is basically help anyone out who is just starting off in this process, who is looking to just speed up that process in general. Because I know if I saw a video like this 2 years ago, this would have had me where I am right now, probably a year ago. Okay, so I don't know, do what you want with all this information. I didn't go too much into detail because I feel like a lot of things I can't really just explain to you. Like I'd just be regurgitating another work. So go out and create what you need to create. And don't forget to create, because yeah, you can study all these things, but at the end of the day, you need to produce what you're trying